Hare Krishna. We're studying from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 8, entitled Manifestation of Brahma from Vishnu. We're studying text 19. It's November 28th, 2025. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim sarasvatim vyasam tato jayamudirayat. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should first offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Sarasvati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta prayeshva bhadreshu bhakti nasta prayeshva bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevya bhagavat utamashloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. So, Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 8, Text 19. Itam Udviksha Tat Abja Nala Nadibi Antajalam Avivesha Na Arvakgata Tatkaranala Nala Nabhim Vichinvan Tat Avindata Aja Saitamudvikshitad Abjanala Nadibir Jalam Avivesha Narvagatas Tat Karanala Nala Nabhim Vichinvams Tadavindataja Saitam Udvikshitad Abjanala Nadibir Jalam Avivesha Narvagatas Tat Karanala Nala Nabhim Vichinvams Tadavindataja Saitam Udvikshitad Abjanala Nadibir Jalam Avivesha Narvagatas Tat Karanala Nala Nabhim Vichinvams Tadavindataja Saitam Udvikshitad Abjanala Nadibir Jalam Avivesha Narvagatas Tat Karanala Nala Sabim vichin vams tadavindataja.
Saitam udviksha tadabjanala.
Saitam udvikshya tad abjanala.
Nadi birantar jalamavivesha.
Nadi birantar jalamavivesha.
Narvakatastat karanala nala.
Narvagatas tatkara nala nala.
Nabim vichin vamstada vindataja.
Nabhim vinchin vams tadavindataja. Okay, we're studying Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 8, entitled Manifestation of Brahma from Vishnu, Text 19. We're now looking at the word meanings. Sa,
Sa,
he, Brahma,
he Brahma,
itam,
itam,
in this way,
in this way,
udviksha,
udviksha,
contemplating,
contemplating,
tat,
tat,
that,
that,
abja,
abja,
lotus,
lotus,
nala,
nala,
stem,
stem,
nadi,
nadi,
by the pipe,
by the pipe,
antajalam,
antajalam,
within the water,
within the water,
avivesha,
avivesha,
entered into,
entered into,
na,
na,
not,
not,
arvak gata,
arvakgata,
in spite of going inside,
in spite of going inside,
tatkaranala,
tatkaranala,
the stem of the lotus,
the stem of the lotus,
nala,
nala,
pipe,
pipe,
nabhim,
nabhim,
of the navel,
of the navel,
vinshinvan,
Vinshinvan,
thinking much of it,
thinking much of it,
tat,
tat,
that,
that,
avindata,
avindata,
understood,
understood,
aja,
aja,
the self-born.
the self-born.
Translation. Lord Brahma, thus contemplating, entered the water through the channel of the stem of the lotus, but in spite of entering the stem and going nearer to the navel of Vishnu, he could not trace out the root. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. By dint of one's personal endeavor, one may go nearer to the Lord, but without the Lord's mercy, one cannot reach the ultimate point. Such understanding of the Lord is possible only by devotional service, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 18.55. Bhakti mama vijanati yavanyashtasmi tatvata. Om Anganatimirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Upakadamayam Tarati Sva Padantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Saganaraganatam Vitam Tam Sajimam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitan Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagna Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Kubika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchan Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpati Yubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanan Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gavani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 8, Text 19. Sa itam udvikshitadabjanala nadi birantar jalamavivesha narvagatas tat karanala nala napim vichimbams tadavindataja. Lord Brahma, thus contemplating, entered the water through the channel of the stem of the lotus, but in spite of entering the stem and going nearer to the navel of Vishnu, he could not trace out the root. Okay, right. So tracing out the root. So it's just like very natural, particularly with somewhat developed intelligence to want to trace out the root, to understand what's the source. Even we meet someone and say, oh, where are you from? We want to know our ancestry. What's the source? What's the root? So it's a very natural inclination. And so this is a history of creation. This just depictions of Brahma and Mahavishnu. Right, there's Mahavishnu, who's like the super soul of the metacosmos. Then there's Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, super soul of the macrocosmos, and Kshirodakashayi Vishnu, super soul of the microcosmos. Microcosmos, our own bodies, each atom, andantarasta, paramano, jantarastam. Now, some might say, oh, well, this is like some mythology. And, so no, so Bhagavatam's giving history. I'm not regarding it as mythology. And then, when it comes to, that which is beyond our senses, then, then we get to choose, what authority to accept. We get to choose what authority to accept. No, actually, the fact is, even those things that are within the purview of our senses, right? Our senses are apt to deceive us. Again, the basic examples, just like say with our senses, with our senses. Let's say a little child, a 2-year-old child with the senses will see the sun is a yellow circle in the sky about 3 inches in diameter. That's what the senses say. The senses are wrong. The senses are, they're subject to defects like illusion and mistakes. So we say, no, it's because we're in a sense, we're also seeing a yellow circle in the sky 3 inches in diameter. But that's not what we're seeing. We're seeing through the eyes of knowledge, just basic scientific knowledge. No, it's a stellar body, and it's tens of millions of miles away, and it's 1.4 million times the volume of the Earth. So that's through the eyes of even material science, like that. So like that, and so so we could see, like, so let's say who was there at the dawn of creation. So like, okay, so none of us or none of the astrophysicists were there, but then we can, so no, like the idea is that intellectual, sophisticated people, they know that the scientific explanation is that there was a big nothing that exploded, and then as a result of that explosion, now we have Shakespeare's sonnets. That's obviously the intellectual scientific explanation. Okay, so we can put our trust in that. We can put our trust in that, and we might go, or we can say, okay, let's say there at the first dawning of life, like, oh yeah, we could yeah, well, obviously there was whatever, some lightning bolt, and then some inorganic protoplasm merged together, and then you had an amoeba. So it's like science. Science means like an experiment. You can actually see it happen, right? So, so how many experiments are there, whether in nature or in a laboratory, where matter comes together and then there's life, a conscious being? Big zero. Big zero. So it would seem to be I'm not saying that, someone can't believe that, but to believe that would seem to be anti-scientific. Science means like you can do it. Now we have trillions upon trillions of examples of life coming from life. I mean, that's proven. Like we each came from a mom and dad who were alive. The tree came from a seed, which came from a tree that's alive. Life comes from life. Life comes from life. Um, so someone can believe that matter, subatomic particles collided, and then there was life. Um, but then to say like, but then I said that I'll call it, and the herd of independent thinkers, the herd of independent minds, all agree that life came from dead matter. That's scientific. Wait, scientific means just like, okay, like Newton has his theory of gravitational force, and Einstein his theory of relativity. Well, you can test it. You can test it. It's like if you drop an object, so according to theory, it'll fall at that acceleration, and they actually like they can go into like very fast planes, and they can say, oh, time actually slows down. Okay, like you can actually test it. But then, okay, so all the tests, like, come on, mix chemicals, buy chemicals at the store, mix chemicals in the laboratory, create life. How many times has that happened? Zero. So that would require quite a bit of blind faith to believe that dead matter came together to create life. Or like, okay, so obviously, okay, so then but then once there's life, then there's the Darwinian evolution. And one species transforms into another. So again, science means like an experiment that you can actually do and see, like that. So whether in nature or in a laboratory, how many times has anyone here or any evolutionary biologist seen? So I don't believe unless I can see it. Okay. So how many times has anyone seen in a laboratory or in nature one species evolve into another? Big zero. Oh, but all of the herd of independent thinkers, they all know that that's true. And if you don't believe it, then you can't be part of the club of independently thoughtful people. Okay. So, zero experience of one species turning into another. I'm not saying that proves anything. I'm saying like an actually intelligent person should at least have doubt about all of these theories. So I might even say fantasies, especially considering that they all go against basic physical laws like entropy. Like entropy means a material system left to itself will go towards greater and greater disorder, right? Let's just say, okay, let's say the material system left to itself. Let's say our homes, our kitchens, the kitchen sink, right? So it's a system. So let's say if we don't apply ourselves, if a conscious being does not apply ourselves to the kitchen or the laundry, we all have experience. The laundry gets done and folded. It just happens. Magic. The
That's what my
dishes.
family would say.
That's what they would say. Right, right, right. And so then what they're not seeing is that there's a conscious entity called Anandini that's actually folding the laundry. Now they're not realizing that, but okay, they haven't come to that stage of enlightenment yet. But there's actually a conscious entity called Anandini that's putting the dishes and drying them away. So without a conscious involvement, matter goes to disorder. And it's not just David Wolf saying, that's the law of entropy. Okay. So then, okay, let's start again at the, let's say now in some ways the Vedic creation, the Vedic creation history, in some ways it is a sort of Big Bang started by a conscious entity like that. But yeah, okay, so let's say, so again, let's just look not logically. Because yeah, my assertion is that intelligent, truly independently thoughtful person should at least have like serious doubts about what's being presented in terms of Big Bang, life from matter, evolution. Okay, I'd at least have serious doubts like that if we look into it. Okay, so a big explosion, and we gave the Shakespeare sonnets a veil. Let's say there's a big explosion over a city. Okay, we said, a big bomb in a city. The city becomes more beautiful, more structured. No, it goes into chaos and disorder. Okay, yeah. So how does that make sense? Big explosion leads to the precise rotation of the planets and the veins of a leaf in the human brain. Okay, so it goes against physical law. So matter comes to higher level of structure and organization when there's a conscious entity acting on it. Okay, like that. So similarly, okay, so there's inorganic matter. That's a lower level of organization. And then without any conscious entity, it collides and becomes a higher level of organization, organic matter. Again, it goes against basic physical laws. Okay. So, yeah. So my epistological commitments, based on my studies, is in the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Vedas, and yeah, and it just so happens in so many ways. I write about this to some extent in my publication from last year called Srila Prabhupada Shastra, Perspectives on the Infallibility of Srila Prabhupada. And we give many examples. One one from my history is because I had a lot of especially at some point, when I gave like some commitment to Krishna consciousness, to practice bhakti yoga. And then I started having doubts plaguing me. Some of my doubts related to this very chapter we've been studying for a while, chapter 8 of Canto 3. And this in the chapter 11 of Canto 3, it's entitled Calculation of Time by the Atom. Okay. So one thing, if we just look there, and it describes in that chapter, which, well, depending on how quickly we go, we'll be there in a few months or a few years, depending on how quickly we go like that. So it describes that the fundamental unit of time is the time it takes for the sun to traverse the width of one atom. Okay. And then it goes from there, that's like the fundamental unit of time, to the largest unit of time, which is the lifetime of the universe itself, which comes to 311 trillion 40 billion years. The one thing that can disturb our thinking in a expansive way is that like, because if we look at modern conceptions of, say, what was happening in India 5,000 years ago at the time of the Bhagavatam, essentially the conception is you've got cavemen with clubs who can grunt. So then the question arises, well then, how are they formulating these extensive bodies of knowledge with the fundamental unit of time as the time it takes for the sun to traverse one atom, and the and precise distances between the planes of the ecliptic of the different planets of the solar system, stuff that maybe in Western science couldn't be calculated till about the 1800s. Okay, so then it can move us to consider, perhaps it's not, perhaps our conceptions of what was happening thousands of years ago need to be revised. So Vedic cosmology from the Bhagavatam, it actually describes 14 planetary systems, each with its different time dimension, spatial time dimension. And so, and it was like, I was reading it back 1983, 84, when I was kind of beginning some commitment in Krishna consciousness back in Haaretz Yisrael in Israel, back then, there with Rukmini, one of my first senior devotees, guides, and mentors. And but I was having lots of doubts. Yeah, before I made a commitment, I was having no doubt. They're just like, oh well, it says this. Once I made a commitment, then it was like my ego was at stake. Like, I'm standing for this. My ego is at stake, and I felt like, well, how can I explain this? How can I explain this? And I was having like tormenting doubts because this was so appealing and attractive, and it made so much sense. At the same time, it says this and this, and I felt like embarrassed. How can I? And then I won't go through my whole kidnapping story. Some of you have heard parts of my kidnapping story in different in different venues. But at some point, the kidnappers were convinced I was deprogrammed and had seen the light, and they sent me to a rehab center in Iowa City. We have Anasuya with us, just like we're talking about roots and source. So her source is Iowa, like that. In this life, it's not that the soul began in Iowa, but like that. So I was in Iowa City, and for about a day before I escaped big adventures. And so I was sitting there at the rehabilitation center in Iowa City, and on the table there were some magazines, and there was a popular science magazine. I think it was called Popular Science. And I just looked at an article. It was an article on cosmology and cosmography, and I just happened to read that that was back 1984, so more than 40 years ago. But it was saying like the scientists, the astrophysicists and the cosmologists, they've determined that there are actually 14 dimensions, 14 dimensions, and they have the mathematics to like establish it. And like with our senses, we only have access to, in a sense, 4 dimensions, width, height, length, and time, like that. And the other dimensions, mathematically, they're demonstrated, but we just need to kind of trust that. We don't have direct act, we don't have projection. So that really struck me that really struck me that like, oh, that's exactly what the Bhagavatam's saying. Now it's not, maybe at that time it was. Now for me, at that time it was like, oh, that's where science is coming to. That enhances my trust in the Bhagavatam science. And now I'm not that's not my approach. That's not my epistemological approach. Now, it's like yeah. So like because I've had hundreds and hundreds of similar things that really helped me to resolve my doubts. And so now and for a while, I'm at the point that if there's a discrepancy between what Bhagavatam says or anything in Prabhupada's teachings, a discrepancy with modern empirical scientific findings, then my trust is in the Bhagavatam. My trust is in the Bhagavatam. And yeah, that's where my epistemological stance lies. Even if we just take, let's say, something simple, okay, cosmology, 14 dimensions, like, oh, that gets far out, But isn't it amazing that these ancient cavemen came up with time relativity? Prabhupada would often say, like, yeah, Einstein had the right idea. He's like a very brilliant scientist, and Prabhupada would often mention how Einstein, he appreciated there's an intelligence. There's an intelligence behind all of this. It's not just random chance and collisions and explosions. So Einstein, a great brain of whatever 100 years ago, he came to the Bhagavatam conclusion of time relativity. Isn't it amazing that these ancient cavemen had time relativity? Interesting. But let's say if we just take something like diet. Okay, so like let's say, for example, 1950s Western, not like, Europe, United States, basic Western medicine would say like, oh, no, you can't be healthy on a vegetarian diet. You don't get enough protein, whatever. Okay, so that's 1950s. That would be science, nutritional science. You can look, you can read the journals. Okay, and then okay, but then say now it's just like, okay, now it's pretty mainstream by now. That obviously, of course, we need to be balanced and make sure we get enough protein. It's pretty mainstream that vegetarian, actually, those who have vegetarian diet, they live longer, they're healthier, and lower chance for cancer and heart attacks and things like that. So it's just like, well, again, so like they're coming to the conclusions that the Vedas have been giving for thousands of years. Again, those primitive cavemen, like that. So here, I mean, reading the verse in purport, I'm reminded of the saying, work like everything depends on us, pray like everything depends on Krishna, pray like everything depends on God. And that's what I get that Brahma is doing. So Prabhupada writes in the purport, by dint of one's personal endeavor, one may go nearer to the Lord, but without the Lord's mercy, one cannot reach the ultimate point. So in the text, Lord Brahma, thus contemplating, entered the water through the channel of the stem of the lotus. But in spite of entering the stem and going nearer to the navel of Vishnu, he could not trace out the root. So to give our full endeavor with excellence, with consciousness, with purposefulness, and simultaneously, like, work like everything depends on me, and simultaneously pray like everything depends on Krishna, on higher power. And that's what I'm getting from, because he's kind of lost to his identity, his purpose, his service, and so he's searching, and we see he's going to go deep into meditation, and ultimately he's going to get a whole realization, revelation of Krishna, and then Brahma he'll get revelation and realization of what his service is and how to do his service. He's essentially the chief engineer of this particular universe, and this whole universe is compared to like we have a big bag of mustard seeds. This universe is like one mustard seed in that in that bag of mustard seeds. So that yeah, that if we not to neglect the work like everything depends on me part, that can become the proverbial spiritual bypass. And that okay, well, anyhow, it's all up to God, so I'll just watch some television and lounge around for a day or a decade or something. I'm sure like that. So we get to, so the super soul, Krishna, we use that, the supreme facilitator. And so we get to show to Krishna, to super soul in the heart, Ishvara Sarvabhutana Videsha Arjuna Tishtati. In many places, Krishna is describing a full expansion of Krishna is in the heart of all living entities, and Andantarasta Paramanu Chayantarastam. And he's in every atom. So that's the super soul. That's the mechanism of clear intention, consciousness in the result. Super soul's the mechanism of that in every atom, in the heart of every living entities. Krishna says, we just discussed this in our Bhagavad Gita course, chapter 10. Yad yad vibhuti matsatvam shriman urjitam evava tatat evava gachatam mamatesham sasambhava. Krishna says to Arjuna, know that almighty, glorious, and beautiful creations spring from but a spark of my splendor. And that spark, that's the super soul, the supreme facilitator of a material cosmos. And Krishna goes on to say, Ateva bhavnaitena kim gatena tavarjuna vistabhyamidam kritsnam ekam shena sito jagat. And he says to Arjuna, but what need is there for all this detailed knowledge? Because in chapter 10, he gives a lot of details how to know him through nature. Krishna says, with a single fragment of myself, I pervade and support this entire universe. That single fragment, again, that's the Paramatma, the super soul. And so according to our desire, this is the mechanism of consciousness and the result in clear intention. So to the extent that our desires are material in all of the so many forms that could take, then super soul reciprocates with us with material energy. We want to be in forgetfulness who we are as spirit souls. We want to, whatever we want, the Vedas are a desire tree, and super soul will reciprocate whatever our actual intention is. And we, of course, in our courses, we make a distinction between intention and clear intention. And it relates to the ant walking south on the back of the elephant galloping north and things like that. So the actual intention is not just a superficial, yes, I want $1 million or something like that. It's just like, what's the actual intention of the soul? And to the extent that if we want, I want to be a devotee. I want to serve Krishna. I want devotional service. Then Krishna will reciprocate with that. Krishna, Nityasudha Krishna Prema Sajikapunoi Shravanani Shuddha Chitte Karya. Love of Krishna is eternally situated in the hearts of all living entities. It's not something artificially contrived from some external source. And like that. And it's awakened through this process of chanting and hearing. So this God consciousness, Krishna consciousness, the original ecstasy and bliss of the soul, it's awakened. It's awakened through the process of bhakti. And so Prabhupada references a well-known verse from Bhagavad Gita in the 18th chapter, Bhakti mam abhijanati avanyashtasmi tatatattamam tatvato gyatva visate tadanantaram. That Krishna says one can know me personally only through devotional service. And that's where Brahma's gone here. He's going deep into devotional meditation. And he gets vision gets a vision of Krishna, and he comes out with his Brahma Samhita, Chintamani Prakarasat Masukalpa Vriksha. Laksha Viteshu Surabir Apipalayantam Lakshmi Sahasrasata Sambrama Sevyamanam Govindamari Pusham Tamaham Bhajami. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, the first progenitor who is tending the cows, yielding all desires in abodes built of spiritual gems, surrounded by millions of purpose trees and served with great reverence and affection by hundreds and thousands of Lakshmis or gopis. And he goes on with just these brilliant, blissful realizations of spiritual pastimes, of the spiritual realm. So that yeah, again, I shared about one aspect of my kidnapping story and the 14 dimensions back in '84. So also at that time, and it was like plagued by doubts and like, I would use my mind and intellect, which I was very proud of, still am. And I was just like running into like one painful brick wall after the next. And I'm reminded of myself here that like on my own, I was trying to figure things out. And sometimes I would get a few drops, but mostly I would get more and more entangled in mental rabbit holes. And then I was really like painful and tormenting because like this philosophy of Krishna consciousness, it made so much sense and the lifestyle was so pure. At the same time, but I then had these painful doubts. And now, there's healthy, just like everything, there's spiritual material. There's healthy doubt, like we could say the whole Bhagavad Gita is driven by Arjuna's healthy doubt. He's asking questions. He's not blindly accepting. Bhagavad Gita discourages blind acceptance, blind following. So Arjuna's questions, and he has doubt. Even after, like in the second chapter, he surrenders to Krishna and says, I accept you as my authority. Karpanya dosha patasva bhava prichami tvam dharma samuda cheta yatreyasyan nishtita bhuitan me shishastayam sarimam tvam prapanam. Arjuna says, I admit I'm confused about my duty and I've lost all composure due to weakness. In this condition, I ask you, Krishna, I accept you as an authority. Please guide me. Please instruct me now. Now I am your disciple and a soul surrendered unto you. Shishasteham sarimam tvam prapanam. Please instruct me. And even after that, though, there's places in the Gita where Krishna is talking about like yoga systems, and then Arjuna says like, yeah, well, this isn't practical for me. Like that's just not going to happen. Like I'm going to go to the forest and meditate, and like it's just not going to happen. It's not me. So Arjuna was never blindly followed. So there's healthy doubt that leads us to resolve our doubts with higher intelligence, and leads us to self-realization, and leads us to connection and realization of higher principles and truth. And that's different than, let's say, hanging on to doubt even after we get responses, even after we get satisfying responses, hanging on to doubt. And that's what I was noticing. Like at some level I knew, like in some of these forums, I've shared some of this. I would write in those days because a lot of my doubts, actually, some of them were related to this very chapter, and other chapters related to science and things like that. And I was writing there from Haaretz Yisrael 84, 85. I was writing handwritten letters with a stamp to Dr. Richard Thompson. That's Sadaputta Prabhu. And he's a PhD in mathematics from Cornell. I have practically all of his books on my shelf. I've read, I think, all of them at least once, some of them more than once. Quite a brilliant person. He passed away. He departed in 2008. And at that time, I just knew him through correspondence. He, at some point in our lives, early 90s, we both landed with our families in Alachua, Florida. And we actually had like a social friendship and that sort of thing. We would do New Year's parties together and that sort of thing with our families. And but I would write to him from Israel and share my doubts and questions. And one of his letters, he wrote back to me. He said, Bhakta Dave. He said, Bhakta Dave, your doubts are petty. There was no reflective listening or anything like that. Your doubts are petty. So it's just, okay. And then he illuminated for me how come my doubts were petty. And it was very, very helpful for me. And his way of communicating was very helpful for me too, actually. And so, and I could see at some level, I was just hanging on to doubts because I was resisting surrender, and I wanted to just give myself an excuse to indulge in a life of sense gratification and material ego-centeredness. I was using doubts to avoid actually moving towards knowledge, which is different than my doubts driving me towards knowledge, you know. And so sometimes I was just so tormented by the different, you know, the different labyrinth mazes of my mind, and it was I was like it was like stuck. It was like I wanted to give myself with full enthusiasm to my service. At the same time, these doubts prevented me. And I'm not saying I'm completely free from this whole pattern, but I would say I've created breakthroughs in the past 40 years. And then at the same time, so like, it definitely like my intelligence was guiding me to not leave this path and this service. At the same time, my mental doubts were keeping me, preventing me from giving 100%. And in any area of life, if we're not giving 100%, we're miserable, or at least we're not fulfilled. I was, you know, like that, because I was in one sense getting so much joy from the process, and in another sense tormented. Sometimes I would just go into the temple room and offer dandavats, prostrated obeisances to Srila Prabhupada, and chant Srila Prabhupada's pranam mantras. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarini. Because this work like everything depends on me, pray like everything depends on Krishna. I mean, at least the principle is to apply that to everything. If our service is washing the dishes, ultimately we're dependent on Super Soul for everything. So it applies to external service. It applies to pulling the weeds in our heart. I can do my work and I can look introspectively. It applies in interpersonal relationships, and ultimately pray like everything depends on Krishna. It's described in Bhagavad Gita. There are 5 causes, 5 factors as the cause of all action. There's the senses, there's the endeavor, there's etc. There's the place, there's the quality of the endeavor, and ultimately there's the super soul. So even to like clear our own hearts of insincerity and propensity for cheating and deception, like do my work, do my pulling the weeds and honest introspection and get honest feedback, and pray like everything depends on Krishna, like to not that I'm there, but to really at least want, please lift the veil of illusion. Please lift the veil of illusion so I can really see where I'm entangled in material deceptions, and so that I can give myself to you 100%. And yeah, and then oftentimes, I mean, I had so many experiences where just like kind of like throwing arms up in the air, kind of in the spirit of draw putty, just praying to Srila Prabhupada, then I would get realizations and revelations that cleared and resolved the doubts at higher levels that sitting on my own, I could spend 100 years and never get it. And then with more and more of those experiences, then my trust deepened and deepened steadily. And then, and then, and then, now for sure also I'm hearing things that, okay, I'm not understanding it with full, with, with full trust, with full trust that, yeah, this is because of my limitation. And as I continue to engage in bhakti with more drops of sincerity, then I'll get realization, and more dots will connect at higher and higher levels. And so, um, yeah, the kind of, I'll call it the toxic, unhealthy doubt, that just becomes like a, in my experience myself, becomes just kind of like a, it's not like a sincere quest for knowledge and truth. It becomes more of a, just a cynicism to try to shoot everything down. And yeah, be cynical about everything. Okay, should I be should I be cynical about cynicism? Just putting that out there. Okay. Should I be cynical about cynicism? Right? And so that's yeah, because otherwise, in the name of, yeah, because the idea of openness is it's a virtue, open-minded spirit of discovery. How many times do we say things like that? Open, childlike spirit of discovery. Yeah, and that's quality of the soul. That's quality of the diamond soul. But openness is an instrumental virtue meant meant to move me to realize objective truth. Okay, not that, if you say there's any objective truth, it means you're not open. No, openness is meant to move me to objective truth. Basic example we sometimes use, because I was open-minded, right, in whatever. So I was open-minded in first grade, and I trusted the authority, Mrs. Gerbarg. So then I came to realize objective truth, that 3 plus 3 is 6. So someone can say, oh, you're saying there's objective truth, so that means you're a narrow-minded fanatic. No, I stand clear and firm. 3 plus 3 is 6. And I came to that because I was open, and I heard from Mrs. Gerbarg. I tested it. 3 apples and 3 apples made 6 apples. So that's objective truth. So we arrive at objective truth through the quality of openness. I'm meant to, because there's, and especially as the postmodern age goes on, the idea is just, oh no, if you think there's any absolutes or anything objective, that means you're narrow-minded, you're some sort of primitive fanatic. So just giving simple analogies. So through openness, then over the decades, I'm coming to more and more objective truth about the nature of spirit, the nature of matter, like like that. Um, so yeah, so sure, healthy skepticism, and that's different than insincere, closed-minded cynicism in the name of openness, and there's nothing objective. So okay, Canto 3, Chapter 8, Text 19. Itam udvikshita abjanala nadibhirantar jalamavivesha narvagatas tat karanala nala nabhim vichin bums tat avindataja. Lord Brahma, thus contemplating, entered the water through the channel of the stem of the lotus, but in spite of entering the stem and going nearer to the navel of Vishnu, he could not trace out the root. Hare Krishna. Thanks for hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. I welcome any comments or questions. Anandini.
Hare Krishna, thank you. I appreciate your start with the herd of independent thinkers. What came to me listening was that Brahma, as the first living entity in the universe, is such a role model for us.
Yeah.
How to go about life in an intelligent way. And when I was comparing it, so Brahma, he how I understand, he existed, and then at one point he realized, oh, I exist. And then he started to wonder, okay, like, so it's the self, he turned towards itself, realized, oh, I exist. So what I'm supposed to be doing? And he just got clarity. There must be a purpose for his existence. And then he was patient, patient to find out, to learn his purpose and to learn how to do what he's supposed to be doing from Krishna. And then he did it. And also I think at one point he prayed to Krishna, like, please give me the humility that I never become proud of, creating such an amazing thing as a universe with all the planets and all. And yeah, I was comparing that to what we do in Sattva, like the pact, just writing a pact, the personal achievement compact. We start with the essence, with a contract. What qualities of the self do I want to bring into life, and then plan activities from there. So that's seems to be parallel to what Lord Brahma did. And I had a conversation yesterday with someone who was in a recent foundational seminar, and we were speaking about the possibility for him to take the advanced seminar. And he was sharing that he's in a life transition, and he's taken many bad choices. And now he's in a transition, and he sees it as an opportunity to really connect with himself and his purpose. And so moving forward from now, he will take choices about his career. It was mainly his career that comes from the diamond qualities. And I think he has registered for the advanced in Wales now. But I was really moved by his thinking, and now I was connecting it to Lord Brahma. Yeah, that's how Lord Brahma went about creating this universe, and he was really successful.
Thanks for all the realizations and the connections you make on Nandini. And yeah, I highlight the Brahman as an example, like, and so, like, we'll cite so many references from Srila Prabhupada's life, as inspiring examples. And then Srila Prabhupada's our current link to the disciplic succession, and Brahma is the first spiritual master in our disciplic succession. We can say Krishna is, and Tene Brahma Vidayade Kavye, Brahma received all the Vedic knowledge, all the Vedic wisdom in his heart, and the Vedic wisdom was in the form of Krishna's flute, and so through Krishna's flute vibration. And so, so Brahma's story, we can see he's in the whole transformational process, and he's literally in darkness, and he moves towards the light. And yes, I appreciate all the connections you made about Brahma and relating it to he's not just going into action, going into action without clarity on who am I and what's my purpose. The core of the being, connecting with who he is, his contract, we can say, and then from there, doing and having the whole universe. And thanks for that reference too. Yeah, at some point Brahma realizes he's susceptible to false pride. Of course, that played out in chapters 13 and 13 of Krishna book, when he went into some pride there. But he went and he prayed to Krishna that, please keep me humble. Please keep me humble to know that I'm your servant. Like the essence of humility to yeah, to know our position, to know our role. And so yeah, so many wonderful life lessons from our teacher, Lord Brahma. Thanks for that.
Yeah, and I just want to add one more thing as you were sharing about your approach to Srimad Bhagavatam. For me, Srimad Bhagavatam, it's like the ultimate fairy tale, like in the sense that I always loved fairy tales and stories,
Yes.
and here's one I can just fully believe it to be true, like a true fairy tale. And my doubts, I have a lot of doubts, and they mainly relate to myself and my ability to live according to the guidance and the wisdom that's there in Srimad Bhagavatam.
Thanks for sharing. Yeah, and so our psychophysical nature upbringings are different in some ways, and so like in one sense, yeah, you were naturally accepting mystical stories and fairy tales, growing up, and as a teenager, I wasn't like that. So Bhagavatam, that kind of really resonated with where your spirit and mind and intellect naturally went, and that wasn't so much the case for me. And I hear and your doubts, and I share that too. Your doubts were more about like yourself and insecurities and your capabilities to represent Bhagavatam and Srila Prabhupada like that.
Yeah, represent, and yeah, I guess living it also means representing it.
To live it.
To live it. Yeah.
Thank you, Anandi.
Thank you.
Thanks for your sharing. Bhakteen Rosa at Wood of the Root, Gainesville, Florida.
Hare Krishna. Anandini, I appreciate so much what you said about Rama praying that he can remain humble. I haven't read that part yet, but I look forward to it. It has a lot to do with some of the thoughts that came up to me here. So, the purport: by dint of one's personal endeavor, one may go nearer to the Lord, but without the Lord's mercy, one cannot reach the ultimate point. We had a class in Groveland where part of this discussion was about commitment to japa chanting, and dear Govinda was telling some stories about people he's known. After a couple of weeks, perhaps they're like, I thought it was supposed to be better, but it's so much worse. It's so much worse. They just, all of the things that haunt us become dredged up, and we are aware of the things that exist, but the awareness is heightened and we can see it. And in that way, it's humiliating. It's the humility we are learning. I think, anyway, through japa chanting, it brings that up for me anyway. And in regards to what dear Govinda was saying today about like the mind tormenting you, I think, how can I resolve these things? I'm seeing so much. And going back to the story of Rama, I've had this little lifetime that I can remember of endeavor and accomplishment or failure or whatever's going on, and to whatever extent I'm puffed up, whether it's in regards to my intelligence or my physical capacity, and through my sadhana, I'm more clearly seeing, yeah, it's not anything to be puffed up about. It's not anything to think too highly of. And so anyway, the necessity of the Lord's mercy and surrender to the Lord's mercy, and then before that comes the necessary humility in order to surrender. Hare Krishna.
Thanks for sharing, Rosa. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, I mean, Groveland, that's synonymous with Gopal Eco Village. We were there last Friday to Sunday, and some very nice programs, including we had transformative communication workshop that Ichigo organized with like 35 doctors and bankers, and they were very open and humble and receptive. And then we had bhakti yoga programs, morning programs, enlightenment programs. And yeah, that was the theme, because sometimes we hear just like, well, since I'm practicing bhakti and chanting, there's all this envy coming up and lust and material desire, so it's not working. And then so we can see, well, a perspective, no, that's the proof that it is working. This chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. It's the most important, it's the most powerful force in creation. And so just like if we have water, then it works, and that the flowers will come up, and also the weeds will come up, we can say. The weeds are coming up. This watering process isn't working. No, the fact that the weeds are coming up means like the water and the nutrients, it is working. And then all that stuff comes up from the heart. Then that's an opportunity to pull those weeds, clean that dust, clear the junk, whatever analogy we want to use, or an analogy we used at Gopaliko village. Yeah, it's like we can see, oh, yeah, I'm going to clean this room. Should probably take about 20 minutes. And then we start cleaning the room. And after 20 minutes, it's just like, this is a lot worse than it was 20 minutes ago. Yeah, there's all these billows of dust. There's an old sandwich under the bed. How did that get there? This is like a 6-hour job. Okay, so we can say that 20 minutes didn't work. No, the 20 minutes did work. It revealed a lot that was there that I was so much pretending not to know that I forgot I was pretending. Thanks for your sharing, Bhakti Mosa.
And just to add there, what Anandini said about Brahma's example of patience.
Yeah, Brahma's example, and that's key. Srila Rupa Goswami, he says, we want to progress steadily in bhakti. Some essential fundamental qualities. He lists several, and one of them is patience. One of them is patience.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, Sylvan.
I really don't have time to be here. Something you said, Anandini, Brahma was the first. What does that mean? How is Brahma the first when there isn't time? What was there before? It sounds like I was never a fan of the Big Bang Theory, so I appreciated how you destroyed it so well. But how can he be the first if there isn't a Big Bang? To me, the Brahma being the first sounds like Big Bang to me. So I'm asking for clarification here.
Thank you, Sylvan. Well, since Sylvan referenced something you referenced, Anandini, would you like to respond? No pressure, but just if you want to.
Okay, well, I'll start and you can add to it, Dhira Govinda.
Sure.
So my understanding of how the creation of the material universe is described in Srimad Bhagavatam is that, and this will be great for you, Sylvan. So Krishna expanded into different forms, and the form that comes into the material realm is Mahavishnu. And Mahavishnu lies down in the causal ocean, and he's doing yoga nidra. He's
doing that's the original yoga nidra.
And he's being massaged by Lakshmi. She's massaging his feet. And so he's lying there, and then from his navel a lotus flower sprouts. And then in the lotus flower, the first living entity of the material, like the first living entity where a spirit soul enters, is created, and that's Lord Brahma. He's not born like we are born from a mother. So he was the first living entity. So that is within time. That's in the material realm. And so he was the first embodied spirit soul in our universe. And then there's million universes where all the same, what I understand, the same process happens.
Thank you, Anandini. Yeah, and just like, okay, we can speak about, okay, we talked the different dimensions in time, and then we even as humans, we speak about like eternity. Now, we have no experience of eternity, because everything, whether it's these bodies or the Roman Empire, I mean, everything has a beginning and an end, and eventually the solar system will burn out. And like we have no experience of eternity. So just as like a thought exercise, just the fact that we could just the fact that we can speak about eternity, it indicates the possibility that maybe somewhere we have experience of it. We have experience of it. And we don't have experience in this realm. So in practically all ancient philosophical systems, the Greeks, certainly the Vedas, there's conceptions of that which exists within time and that which exists outside of time. So we can say nothing exists outside of the space-time continuum. Okay, what's your proof for that? Like, do you have evidence for that? And so yeah, so just like, there's space is relative, time is also relative. Even in Einstein's theory, the idea is if one goes above 186,000 miles per second, then it's like that's the realm outside. Time slows down till you get there, then there's the realm outside of time. So eternal doesn't mean like a really, really, really long time. Eternal means outside of time altogether. The Bible, the Hebrew Old Testament starts Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim v'et haaretz. In the beginning, in a beginning, God created heaven and earth, indicating that this entity, God, the supreme intelligence, is outside of space and time. He's outside of the beginning. He creates the beginning. He creates all the spatial and temporal dimensions. And so, yeah, okay. And so, so our original existence is in a place that's conspicuous, is in a place where time is conspicuous by its absence. Even when we're I'll say that again. Our original existence, our original consciousness exists in a sphere where material time is conspicuous by its absence, and where there is the whereas the ever presence of eternal time, which is free from past and future, and hence is not subject to the quality of passing away, even for the space of half a moment. Just like I'll go a few places in the next 2 or 3 minutes to respond to what I regard as an intelligent question. One thing, yeah, that's why it is like a Big Bang. It is like a Big Bang. And it's a Big Bang. Yeah, it's a Big Bang that's initiated and activated by a conscious entity. Okay, just like just like conscious entity, Brahma, Vishnu. So it's not a something from nothing. Okay, just like matter doesn't move unless a conscious entity acts on it. That pillow won't move. The pillow has no desire to be in a different room. But a conscious entity, I want that pillow in a different room. So it is like a Big Bang, the Bhagavatam history of creation, and it's moved and activated by conscious entities. Things go from subtle to gross, not gross to subtle. Gross to subtle, that's the Big Bang. Doesn't make any sense. Big Bang leads to Shakespeare's sonnets. Um, Dead matter leads to organic matter. It's gross to subtle. It goes against basic principles even of physics. So this is, yeah, it's like a Big Bang started by the supremely subtle entities, the supreme subtle entities. And then, okay, so we mean like the living entities in material consciousness, we chose to, like, yeah, I don't want to just engage in spontaneous, loving, devotional, joyful, playful pastimes with Krishna and his associates. I want to do my own David Wolf God project. Okay, then we get a chance to do that, and that's called the material creation. And the ultimate principle of the material creation, it's called Durga. Srishti Stiti Pulai Sadhana Shakti Reke, Chayeva Yasi Bhuvanani, Bivarti Durga, Chana Wupam Apyasya, Chateshta Tesa, Govinda Mani Pusham Tamba, Hambajami. Durga means prison house, fortress. We get to come to the prison house of existence, which ultimately is meant in a compassionate way to support us to wake up to our original nature of service to Krishna. No force, but and so at different intervals of approximately 311 trillion, 40 billion years, the material prison house is created for us to try to enact our project, enact our God project, experience the creation, experience the frustration of that, and then turn towards bhakti, turn towards Krishna. And so and then in the material creation, then there's material time. So that's the Bhutva Praliyate. That's the purpose of the material creation, the prison house of 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 existence. And so from that place beyond time, there's no such thing as a place beyond time. Okay, that's an opinion. Again, whether we're looking at Old Testament, the Greeks, Einstein, I mean, there's just like many philosophical systems, not just the Bhagavatam. So there's a realm within material time and a realm beyond material time. And so from the realm beyond material time, as Anandini shared, the Mahavishnu is an expansion of Krishna. Mahavishnu expands, and so as Garbhodaksha Vishnu sprouts the lotus, and then Brahma's service is to create the prison house, including, you can say, 8,400,000 types of cells, types of apart. There's 8,400,000 species, including some human species, and then that's the different bodies, and then so basically, even like whether it's a Safito seminar or when we're like absorbed in like sattvic consciousness intensely, then we have some experience. It's like a timeless space. Like were we in the seminar room for an hour, 12 hours? It's just time, and that's why we like require ground rules, like no timepieces. That's why in the advanced seminar we close all the windows. Oh, the sun's here. It must be this time. So we have an experience of a timeless space, and because our nature is to exist in that timeless space. So it is like a Big Bang. At the same time, it's activated by the supremely subtle conscious entities.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Nandini. So there are more questions coming from that, and one is okay. The prison house is a chance for rehabilitation. Um, how did we get rehabilitated in the first place? Why do I need rehabilitation in the first place? What happened before the material, before the prison house that, you know, where was I? What was I doing that I'm in the prison house now?
Thank you, Sylvan. I appreciate the question. Well, the nature of the self is we're independent. We have independence, and we have independence. And so, exactly where you were. I can't say where I was, but okay. So let's say there we are. There we are with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and we're engaging in blissful pastimes. And this might be oversimplifying, but basically, basically, we misused our independence, just like there can be a very happy citizen of a society of the kingdom or the nation. And it can be just like the citizen is enjoying their family life and their social life and their career and their vacations. And every citizen at every moment has a choice to has a choice to misuse their independence. Means we can act foolishly. And so any citizen could murder their neighbor, could break in and try to steal some money, and then they end up in the prison house. So 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 that's, yeah, we misused our independence, and that was our foolishness.
Thank you. Thank you. So here, before the prison house, this is where there is time. Before that is beyond time. And still there is activity like singing and dancing and
Yeah.
so is that explainable at all? How if there is no time, there is still a time for singing and a time for dancing that are different, but there's no time, and therefore there's a time for acting foolishly, which is a different time to the singing and dancing devotionally and being living in line with life.
Yeah, right. So yeah, like, we get realization of this to the extent that we engage in the timeless process of bhakti. Otherwise, from material conceptions, just like from material conceptions, we're not going to realize who we are as spirit soul. With our material conceptions of space time, we're not going to get what eternal time. In eternal time, um, in eternal time, each moment, each moment exists eternally. Each there, there's not. Yeah, the moment doesn't pass away like in material time. That's why, okay, here's a bit more of an explanation to, again, we realize this to the extent we purify our hearts. But okay, so just like in Rajas and Tamas, that's like the lower modes. And then just like time, oh, what time is it? I'm in, oh, I slept so much and I have to go. It's like we're going count time, material time, and it's pressured. And then what happened, like that. Okay. And then essentially, tamas is destruction, and it's entropy. Things go to disorder. There's no consciousness, destruction. And rajas is like creation. It's like creation. Let's create things. And there's a place for all the energy. And then, and then, and then sattva is maintenance. Sattva is maintenance. Because, for any project, anything, it's a lot of effort to create something, but it's more effort to maintain it steadily for days, weeks, months, decades, lifetimes. To maintain something, that requires higher consciousness than to create something, right? So sattva is maintenance. And so as we get to higher and higher planetary systems, even in the material world, it becomes more and more sattvic. Some parallel to Einstein's as we go faster and faster towards the speed of light. It becomes more, and then when we go beyond the material creation to the spiritual realm, it's pure sattva. There's no tinge of rajas or tamas. It means there's no destruction. So each moment doesn't get destroyed, and no new moments get created. each moment exists eternally. It's called Shuddha Sattva. It's pure Sattva. So it's a different realm and requires us at least to be open to get out of the box of our material temporal conception. So in pure Sattva, there's no passion, so there's no creation of new moments. And there's no tamas, there's no destruction of previous moments. And each moment, it's not subject to the quality of destruction, even for the space of half a moment. I'm quoting Brahma Samhita there. And so each moment exists blissfully and eternally.
Thank you. It's going into a realm that my brain can't understand, and so I'm satisfied up to that point. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Sylvan. Rosa.
Hare Krishna. A question that's coming up for me as we have the Srimad Bhagavatam to tell us about time and the creation of our universes and other universes similarly. But of this eternal space, if it exists outside of time, was there ever a creation of it, or it has always existed and always will exist?
Well, this is eternally existing. Again, by definition, it's beyond the Rajasic mode of creation as a metaphor to help us understand. There's emanations, but that's different than material creation. So just like we can say that the sun rays and the sun rays and the sun always exist. The sun rays and the sun always exist as a metaphor, right? There's never a time when the sun exists without the sun rays. Still, the sun rays emanate from the sun. The sun globe are the source of the sun rays. So all of the energies, so Krishna exists beyond time, exists eternally, exists beyond time. And all of Krishna's energies, including ourselves, material energy, spiritual energy, all of Krishna's energies emanate from Krishna. And as Bhagavad Gita says, never was a time when we did not exist, and simultaneously, we're not created, the spirit souls, we're not created in time. At the same time, we emanate from Krishna as the sun rays emanate from the sun. So it's a whole realm outside of material time, outside of our conceptions of creation and destruction.
Hare Krishna, I think that gets to some of the foundation of my question is wondering our purpose. So in Christianity or whatever theology, God created man, right? And I'm trying to make connections here. So by that, I'm speculating it's this mixture of the material with the spiritual, but our spirit souls have existed eternally with Krishna. They were not created.
Correct. Just as the sun rays exist eternally with the sun, still the sun rays emanate from the sun.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Anandini.
Yeah, I appreciate this conversation a lot. And I wanted to add that while before the prison house experience, it doesn't need to mean that we did something really, really bad. Like it could have been a desire to do what Lord Brahma does.
Yeah.
And then there's a gradual downward evolution. And then I wanted to also just express this, for me, an unresolved question is when Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, if we return to him, if we return to the spiritual world, we will never go back to the material world again.
Yeah.
And for me, that's just and it might always remain an unresolved issue for me.
Okay, thanks for that. Okay, so we'll close with some comments on that very fascinating subject matter. So thanks for that example of Lord Brahma. Yeah, that's why when I responded to Sylvan, I said I'm kind of simplifying. But basically, we made a choice, and the choice could be just like, oh, I want to serve Krishna by being the master of a universe and kind of manage the prison house. That's a service. At the same time, once we do that, then we can get a little proud, even maybe not our universe Brahma, but some Brahma can get a little proud and enjoy the power and not be completely humble, and then maybe then take another lifetime as a great demigod, enjoying in the material world and fulfilling lots of responsibilities for Krishna, become a subtle thing, and after trillions of lifetimes, then maybe kind of in the earth planet like that. So it could start with like, I want to serve Krishna as a Brahma, and Prabhupada says that. Prabhupada says exactly what you just said in a purport in the 9th canto. It can start a Brahma. It doesn't start like, we did some atrocious criminal activity. And then, okay, like in the 8th chapter that you're referring to, if we look at the purports there and in so many places on Nandini, Prabhupada uses the have to language. He uses have to, need to. And so what I understand he's saying, and that Krishna's saying, is that, yes, the one who comes pure devotional service comes back to Krishna, and it's like, personalities like Jesus or Prabhupada or the cowherd boy, like that. Yeah, then then you don't have you don't have to come back to another material birth. That's the way Prabhupada explains it. Prabhupada emphasizes the spirit soul always has independence, which means the possibility to choose something foolish. But what I understand that those verses are saying, for example, in the 8th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, is Krishna and Prabhupada are saying, in that pure devotional consciousness, then one's not forced to take birth from a material womb to fulfill some material desires. There's no have to. There's no have to, and that does not negate the fact that in all existences, including the place beyond material time, the spirit soul always has independence. That's my brief understanding.
Thank you. So does the spirit soul remember its time in the material world? Does that stay as a memory, as a warning? Don't do this again?
My understanding is the essential impression is there because the spirit soul in the pure is not under the cloud of Maya. A facet of Maya is called avaranatmika shakti. It means it covers, like we could be suffering like anything, but we're thinking we're happy. Probably the pig in stool thinks it's happy. We think we're doing fine. Why should I intensely take to bhakti like that? So the spirit soul in its pure form, I don't know the details, but it means like the impression's there. Still, the independence is there. Just like, an example we give, and it's like an absurd example, but I think it conveys the point. So any of us here right now, we could go to the kitchen, turn on the stove, and put our hand on the fire. We could do that. We have the free will to do that. Like, that would be really stupid and foolish. You'd be like insane. But we have the independence. We could do that. So similarly, the spirit souls in that eternal realm beyond time, playing with Krishna, that it would be even more horrendous to think about doing that. But it's not that they can't do that. Independence is always there.
Thank
It's
you.
not that they can't choose material life. And as you said, but it can start as like, oh, I want to serve as a Brahman, and then there's some slight pride, and then some slippery slope.
Thank you. That's satisfying. And I might ask the question again in 5 or 10 years.
Yeah. And thank you, Rukmini writes. Is that where fear of independence stems from? Thanks for that question. To me, it makes sense. Yeah, that fear that I'll foolishly misuse my independence and create my own suffering for myself and others. Jai Srimad Bhagavatam ki. Srila Prabhupada ki. Jai. Hare Krishna.